What should you say when you get that dreaded "it's too expensive" objection at the end of a sales call, end of a sales conversation as a service provider? So you do not need to sacrifice your prices, you do not need to negotiate, and you can still potentially close the sale at the end of the day. I'm going to be walking you through exactly that in this video. So we're going to be going through what is the best response that you can possibly give to "it is too expensive" when you get this objection come up from your potential clients. So first thing I want to say is this can be hard. This can be one of the hardest objections. It's a tricky one to handle because yes, sometimes this is factually the case for people. They factually cannot afford it. We're acknowledging that first off. But also if you are hearing this a lot, if this is the case of you've been on 5 sales calls and 4 out of 5 of them have said they can't afford it, it's too expensive, then there's probably something else going on that we need to talk about here. And it's probably something else leading to this objection versus it being a factual case in the first place, especially if people have got on sales calls with you. Typically, if someone's got on a call with you, if they're even having that conversation in the first place, there's at least a chance that they can afford it. There's at least a way they could make this work if they perceived it to be something they wanted to make work. So we're going to talk through actually, how to handle this conversation and how to handle this situation. And also, firstly, how to actually stop yourself getting into this situation in the first place, because it sucks when you're a service provider and you've had consistently lead after lead saying it's too expensive, I can't afford it, pricing doesn't work for me right now, too expensive, over and over again. So we're going to be walking you through how to actually prevent that from happening in the first place, and also what to do when that does happen, because inevitably it will happen occasionally. But if it's becoming a majority thing, we need to talk about this. And if you're hearing this a lot, we're going to be fixing that today. So the tricky part here is usually a decision has already been made. When someone's saying, okay, it's too expensive for me, they've already made the decision to some extent, and there's usually not going to be a 3-minute conversation after that where they're going to say, actually no, let's go for it, that sounds brilliant right now. And oftentimes that decision, at least temporarily, has been made for them. So we're going to talk about what to do with that situation, but first off, let's start with how to actually stop yourself getting into that situation at the moment. So you may be in that position with clients at the moment where you're getting very much this kind of response at the end of a sales call of the, yeah, that sounds great, but no, it's not really going to be happening for me right now. That doesn't work for me. It's a bit too expensive. And we're going to be taking that from that reaction to this. It's a yes. It's 100% yes with them. So that is our goal from this video today. Let's start with how do we actually avoid this response in the first place? So how do we avoid the "it's too expensive" replies in the first place? Often too expensive for a lot of people will kind of translate to it's not a high enough priority for them. So we're really here wanting to make sure that we are showing the perceived value, because if they're saying it's too expensive and they had got on the sales call, it would have been out of work for them, but then they're thinking, this just doesn't seem valuable enough for me. It doesn't seem like it's actually going to fix my problem. I don't feel super 100% yes about this. Then it's typically just a perceived value problem and versus the price point. So for example, they're seeing the perceived value down here, but the price point is up here, when actually we need these to be equal, if not the perceived value higher than the price point. So if we've gotten to the end of the sales call and this is the response, we need to be working on the actual sales pitch. That's the part we really need to be focused on, because yes, it's great shoving people through the sales process and actually having these sales conversations with people, but if we're ending at the same place every single time and we're getting the response of it's too expensive for me, we need to be working on this sales pitch and we need to clean that up so we can actually have a just really positive response with people there. So if you are hearing this, people should really be seeing the perceived value in your marketing that they're seeing or in the sales call that you've had. That is your time to showcase this all. That is your time to say how amazing this offer is. Scream it from the rooftops. Share the testimonials. Share the results. Share just what this can do for them, how much it can change their lives. So what you need to be working on is firstly, where aren't you fully showcasing this? Where are the missing pieces of the client, for example, getting to the end of the call and thinking, I know your program helps people to improve their fitness, but I want to specifically lose weight, and I'm not sure you specialize in that area, so maybe this isn't the best fit for me right now. Maybe I should go with someone who really specifically talks about this instead. That's just an example, but where do you feel like there is that gap? Where are you not fully showcasing how this will solve their problem? Where do you need to speak a little bit more directly to that specific client? Where do you need to address their just problems and address their desires a little bit more? So now that we've covered what this really looks like of, how you can actually prevent this a little bit in the first place, of really just sharpening those sales skills, making sure that, people are seeing that perceived value compared to the price point, it's just feeling like a no-brainer yes for them. how do you actually respond to this question when this does happen to you? Because inevitably it's going to happen occasionally. When this does happen, here's what I want you to say. Firstly, okay, that's completely fine. Thank you for letting me know. You can add anything else to that if you're wanting to, but really, it's an okay. There's nothing that you're going to do to change that person's mind in that moment right there. As I said, they've pretty much come to a decision usually if they're saying that, at least for the time being. So trying to push, trying to say, oh yeah, okay, let's make it work. I'll give you a discount instead. Or what about if we did this instead? Typically that won't work. If you're picking up the vibe of it's just, oh, I'd love to make this work, but that exact payment plan doesn't work for me right now, absolutely, come up with a different payment plan, whatever works for you there. And yes, sometimes it can work finding them a lower offer. You can very much just kind of do a vibe check here essentially and just see, where are you feeling like they're at? Because sometimes a lower offer can actually be a really good fit, but it is not your job to convince them. If they are, not feeling good about investing in that right now, it's not your job to say, oh, but this could be really helpful, but I think you should go for it for this reason, or but we can make the money back, etc. If they have got to the point of saying those words, they are pretty decided at the moment with that, I would always say. And again, your pitch and sales call is really where you are showing the value. That's the part to show the value. You've done your work. It's their response now that you are waiting for. You're waiting for their response. And if they give that response, that is totally okay. So once this has been decided, what you want to do is, this sounds really against the grain here, but bear with me because I'm going to walk you through exactly how to handle this really well to actually still usually get them as a client. Pulling back is the answer. You do not want to be in their face. You do not want to be trying to argue with them of why they can afford it or why this actually would be really good, or don't worry, I'll reduce the price to whatever level you can afford, anything like that. Give them space to just reevaluate the value. So give them space, walk away from them. It's completely fine. Give them that time again. And the best thing is usually over this time, they will be reevaluating in their mind. It's not a set in stone decision typically for people. It's okay, right now it feels more no than yes. It's a right now this doesn't work for me. Right now this doesn't feel like the right investment for me. And if they are at some point, if they are actually genuinely a really good fit for you, if they are really an ideal client and you're knowing, they're just holding back a little bit or they're just worried about the investment, etc., then giving them just time and letting them by themselves, if they want to reevaluate the value, that's a really hard one to say. I don't know why I wrote that in particular there. But if they want to reevaluate that value, that is completely fine on them. And you'll be so surprised by how many people come back around when you do this. How many people, when you just release it, just let it go, it's completely fine, actually come back around because of the things which I'm going to share with you next and the specific strategies which I will always just put into place and which work really well. If it is just truly a case of they've just not felt confident enough in that investment, this is what you want to be doing. This is what you want to be doing generally anyway, but this is just the strategy essentially. Pull back and do these things. So number one, you want to work on perfecting that sales pitch and make it a no-brainer for your ideal client. So next time, this isn't going to keep happening for you. This is going to happen less and less and less and less every single time you're doing a sales call. Work on perfecting that sales pitch. Make it a no-brainer for your ideal client who is looking to solve that problem. You have the solution. Make it a complete no-brainer for them to actually sign up for your program. Secondly, you want to give that person who said it's too expensive space. Do not come at them. Do not try and convince them. Do not try and say anything. And also, at the same time, this is so important, still keep hyping up and speaking about your offer on social media because they are still watching. 99% of the time, if you've had a sales call with someone, they've said it's too expensive right now for me, it doesn't work for me right now, they're still watching you on social media. They haven't unfollowed, they haven't unsubscribed, they're still watching every move you're making, and they're still thinking about it to some extent. Them saying no, not right now, it's too expensive, whatever that is, it's not typically, again, there's always the exceptions of people who literally cannot afford this, so not talking about those people here, but it's typically not a 100% no. It's just the case right now for them that it's more no than yes. They might be a 60% no, 40% yes, or 70% no, 30% yes, etc. But it's just more no than yes. That's why it's a not right now. That's why it doesn't feel like it works right now. The perceived value is feeling lower, etc. But they are still watching and you essentially have a second chance there because if they are really loving the idea of this program, if they're still thinking, oh, this would be really great. I would love to be able to do this. I'm just stuck on the fact of I'm not sure if it's for me or I haven't seen a client who is in my exact situation go through this program and I haven't seen a testimonial from someone who I feel like relates to me, etc. You can share things on your social media and they're going to see them anyway. So if you think, okay, I feel like the objection for them was really, is this program specifically right for me? Then have you had a client who's really similar to them recently? Can you showcase them on your Instagram and share about them? So this person is just able to see that and able to, if they want to, come to their own decisions around that, realize maybe, oh, actually, this could actually be good for me. I want to start this conversation again, etc. But the main thing here to just remember is they are still watching, they're still paying attention. So there's no reason to feel like, oh, okay, I can just ghost this person now. They wasted my time, anything like that. Oftentimes you'd be so surprised how many people will just come back at some time and just say, actually, I have been thinking about it. I've been, I'm working things out and figuring out, how I can make this work, etc. 3 months later and say, yeah, actually, I would love to have that conversation again. So it can be really helpful just to remember that. Remember they're still watching. Remember to still just keep showing up, still talking about your offer, still selling your offer because they are paying attention. And it's very likely that at some point they're going to come back, whether that's for a different offer, a lower offer which you have, whether it's for the same offer because they've now are in the position where they're thinking, actually, this feels like a full body yes for me right now. Whatever it is, they will come back at some point potentially. And it's really helpful for us to just remember that. So that is what I would say for the response for how to speak to the idea of it is too expensive without negotiating your prices, without needing to try and argue back anything. Actually just give them that space and still give them the opportunity for if they would like to come back again. It is such a great way to approach things and it's worked so well for me. There's been several times I've had this objection. It's been an okay for people and they've come back 6 months later and said, actually, okay, I'm ready for the program now, or come through a different program, etc. So it can work so well. Let me know in the comments, have you had this objection before? Are you going to be trying this out? And let me know what you found helpful as well from today's video. And I will see you in the next one tomorrow.